So thank you very much for accepting the interview.
Pleasure.
I was reading this book and I was amazed because I didn't know average people like him or me or most people, those who are not in the music business,
right.
I was not aware that we could develop an isolation of sounds, and that was very interesting for me. Could you please tell me?
Yeah, I mean, it's something, as I said at the show, was something I had to teach myself to do, which started with the bass line, hearing people discuss the bass line in a complete recording and be able to obliterate everything else on it apart from the bass, or if it was the guitar, obliterate everything in their mind, I guess, other than the guitar. And it took me about 2 years to sort of, I could never figure out how people did it, but it took me about 2 years to do it, and then I guess naturally I could accommodate any other situation.
You're both the authors of this book.
Right.
When was it published?
2006. Yeah.
He just told me it took him 5 years to write it. How did you two meet? How was this process of let's write a book, let's write your memories?
Oh, well, do you want to explain that? I mean, everyone, when I used to do other sessions, right, people used to say to me, because they always wanted like Beatles, tittle tattle and tales. And they always used to say, one day you should write a book. But I'm not very good at putting pen onto paper. I mean, it's all up here. I know what I want to say, but as soon as the pen hits the paper, nothing happens.
This was in London, right?
No, in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. So you do not live in London?
Oh, no.
In England anymore?
No. I'm an American citizen as well now. Yeah.
Yo quisiera preguntar si está consciente de la gran importancia que tuvo su trabajo en el éxito de los Beatles.
He wants to know if you're aware of the importance on the Beatles' work so as to make it a huge success.
I am now. At the time of actually making the records, we knew that they were special, but we didn't realise it was going to develop into what it's developed into. Obviously, it's like a myth, not a myth. It's become iconic without any product for so many years, because the Beatle product finished in '69. So there's been no Beatle products in '69 except the two Lennon tracks we did, Free as a Bird and the other one, Real Love. But it's just become iconic from all those years ago. It wasn't iconic at the time. It's just developed into that. So I am aware of it. Sure, I am. Yeah.
Good.
And the other great thing is the way it's sort of attracted all the younger generation to become engineers or producers or whatever, to carry on the work.
Of course.
Yeah.
Being the sound engineer of the Beatles, did you receive, of every album that was produced, did you receive your own copy, your own free copies?
No, not on vinyl. But I mean, as you know, I quit after so many songs. But no, I mean, we were, in those days, we didn't really exist. I mean, we weren't allowed to have a credit on the album. There's no credits given to us. The guy that took the front picture got a credit, but we didn't, And we were never given an album, and we were never given gold records. In fact, when I got the Grammy for Sgt. Pepper, the manager in the office at Abbey Road thought it should be his, because Abbey Road recorded the album.
Yesterday in the conference when you were talking about the album Revolver,
yes,
he said that he knows that it was a difficult album to engineer because all the new sounds and things that were made different. Was that the base for your afterward work?
Oh yes, oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it did, because we were always striving for something better than the last album, and even when we were making Pepper, each song, or the way it was treated, had to be better than the last song that we'd recorded. So it was, it was getting harder and harder and harder as the tracks progressed. That was it was so hard after doing Strawberry Fields to start making the tracks more as interesting or better than Strawberry Fields. Yeah, I mean, it was hard. I mean, otherwise it was fun doing them. It was hard work at the same time. We didn't just sit there for like 5 hours while they were routining the song. During that 5 hours, we were, crafting the way it was going to be presented and recorded and what it was going to sound like.
Who made the decision of which song was going to be the first one and then the second one?
It was
The Beatles?
Oh, everyone. No, I wasn't involved. Well, sometimes I was asked, but especially with George Martin and the Beatles, you know. If they got stuck on something, they might say, well, "What did I think?" Just to be the.
And that was based on what? That has impact.
In those days, it was based on two things. Basically, the key of the songs, the related keys of the songs. As one key, you know, the first song was in key whatever it was in. Did it relate? And the next song was in the next key. Did the two keys relate, or were they, you know, discordant? You know, they didn't. But most albums, I'm calling them albums now. That's the way they were structured. It was more pleasing to the ear to have.
They call that process sequencing.
Yeah, sequencing. Yeah.
And the days of vinyl, when there were two sides, usually you wanted to have a strong song starting each side and ending each side, and you put the weaker songs in the middle. That's usually the way.
Yeah.
You also have here a description of the day when John Lennon was murdered, assassinated.
Yeah.
And you were that day.
We were
at
working.
Pierre's studio.
Right, that's right. We were
Paul
working.
McCartney.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Can you please tell me a little bit about Paul McCartney's?
Well, I mean, he was in shock. I mean, we thought the session was going to be cancelled because Paul was actually used to come up to London on the train, and his driver used to pick him up at the railway station, and we thought the session was going to be cancelled. But I guess he decided to do the session anyway, which he did, obviously.
You had already heard the news on the radio, right?
Someone phoned me up, so I didn't know what to expect. So yes, the session was still on, but then we start working on some of Paul's tracks, and within 10 minutes he'd come into the control room for whatever playback, and we'd start talking about the old Beatle days for an hour, and then get back to work. And I mean, it was just it was setting into his mind. I mean, he was obviously in shock, you know. Yeah. I mean, we all were, obviously. I mean, it's one of those. Well, you know, it takes a while for it to sink in, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Did you see Paul cry at that time?
Not that day, but he probably did at home. I don't know.
You said music. For me, music is to paint with sound.
That's right. Yes.
And that was like, wow. Do you associate colors to sounds?
Yes, because what happens in the sort of work process, you know, because say the orchestra or the band or whatever's routining or rehearsing on the studio floor, right? And then you sort of walk around and you sort of listen to it, and then something catches your ear that you like, and that becomes like the dominant thing that you, or a colour. Let's say it's the dominant colour, and then you sort of build your mix or your picture in your mind around that colour of that instrument, you know. And then there's certain things the way you EQ things and mix them in and merge them. So, you know, things start as yellows and reds, or they're more aggressive or more, you know, mellow and so forth, you know. So you're seeing this picture, you know, which could be, it's just obviously an abstract picture, mostly.
Can I just interject something?
Yeah.
I think this is really interesting. What Geoff is describing is it's a documented psychological condition called synesthesia, where the senses cross over. There are people who smell something, and when they get a certain smell, they see an image, or they see something and they hear a particular sound. The particular kind of synesthesia Geoff has is he hears a sound and he sees a color. He associates a color with that sound. Very, very few people in the general public have this, like less than 1%. But I would estimate that 80% of the engineers and producers I've interviewed over the years have this. And a lot of them tell me that they have the same thing. So I think it's something you're born with and it drives you.
It's something you're born with.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So that's what I sort of try and teach, you know, the young kids, for want of a better word, with this Pro Tools situation and painting by numbers. You know, it needs that individual brushstroke on that image to make it, you know, really something special. Everyone's making the same sounds, the same record. Every record sounds the same. There's no individual brushstroke, you know, because of the method of working now.
You also said a recording studio is another instrument for the engineer. You know. So that makes you an artist.
Yeah,
too,
it's
right?
completely artistic. I'm not a technician. It's purely artistic. It's nothing to do with technology. Because when modern technology started to come into being, all I wanted to do was I'm thinking of mixing all these tonalities together. I didn't want any distractions from moving faders and knobs and dials and numbers, and it was just a distraction. So, you know, my second engineer always takes, I don't even think about it. You know, so anyway, so that's the way it is for me.
Indian musicians work with no scores.
Indian musicians?
Yeah. Have you worked with
yes,
them?
when we did Within You, Without You was the first experience with working with Indian musicians.
Was it different because they have no scores, no way of...
Well, I mean, it's in their minds, because I know their musical rhythm is based on, I think it's 16 beats to the bar, if you call it a bar. There's 16 beats. Because what happened on Within You, Without You, just as a little tangent from this story, there's a gap in the middle of Within You, Without You, where it all restarts up. It stops after the solo section, I think, and you hear a little sort of ba-boom, ba-boom, and it comes back in. Well, when it was the original 16 beats to the bar, that little gap felt too long. It was too much of a pause. So we snipped out a couple of beats or a beat. And when Indian musicians try to play Within You, Without You, when they get to that point, they always come in at the wrong place. And they never realise what we'd done, and apparently it's insulting to actually interfere with those 16 beats, and I didn't know that. I found this out, quite recently. But we snipped that out because we were redoing it on a concert thing recently. But yes, it's good fun working with Indian musicians. Yeah.
Durante el estudio, si había complicaciones directas con Yoko Ono por querer permanecer en las sesiones de grabación.
Was there any kind of problem, or did you feel upset because Yoko Ono was at the studio all the time?
No, I mean, I didn't personally. I mean, I know she gets the raw deal. I mean, it's basically the fact there were so many other problems going on with the Apple situation, their company. There were problems, tremendous problems with that. And it wasn't, as I said, from my point of view, it didn't make a lot of difference for me. I mean, she was really just part of the furniture, But from the musicians, the rest of the musicians.
It's not going to come out looking too good.
No. But the rest of them. No. It's not an insult. I mean, she's part of the surroundings. But it was annoying to the other members of the band to have her wandering around the studio while they're trying to record,
And also, I understand, this is very clear for me, that John was the one who challenged you by saying, I need to sound like From the Moon.
Yeah.
And that Paul was the one with more musical knowledge, who would say, I would like violins here.
Yeah. Paul was the musician's musician, as I believe you call him that, don't you?
Lots of people call him.
Yeah, he's the musician's musician, and Paul would strive for 101% of anything, whereas John would stop at 95%. Because all those original basic rhythm tracks on all those songs, I mean, good 99% of them are complete takes. I mean, if the group broke down and 2 bars from the end, we wouldn't do an edit piece. We'd go right back to the top and re-record the whole thing until it was note perfect in one take. So, and Paul, that's what Paul strived for. But John would sort of say, "Oh, that's okay,"
Leave it like that.
But Paul wasn't. No. So Paul was the driving force, as far as I'm concerned. He was the driving force musically behind the band.
What about George and Ringo?
Well, Ringo was the most incredible drummer because Ringo was like the backbone of those tracks. And after we finished it in the middle of the night on a session, the floor of his drum location was just covered in wood chips. I mean, he'd been drumming for 5 or 6 hours maybe, non-stop. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but 4 or 5 hours at least. And then the end of the evening session would be when Ringo just stood up and put his coat on and started to go out, and that was the end of the session. There was no sort of discussing it with anyone. He couldn't do any more. Oh yeah, well George was. George sort of struggled. I'm going back now to Revolver. Well, from Revolver onwards, when we were trying to, I guess, progress. And we were trying to do different things, backwards guitars and more complicated guitar solos. And, George it took him time sometimes to work out things. And then George needed a sort of an outlet. I guess it was becoming like hard work for him. And he needed an outlet, and that was the interest in Indian music. which gave him the outlet, and he, became a great, guy with the Indian music and a good songwriter eventually, and an incredible guitar player. But George knew what he wanted, obviously. Yeah, but it took him a while to build up the talent to be able to do it. That's all. He was younger as well, wasn't he? He was the youngest.
What would be a good message from you to the new generations?
Well, there we go. No, it's in just a sentence. It's use your ears and not your eyes, and that's what they're doing with the Pro Tools situation. They're not hearing music. They're just looking at squiggles on the screen. I'm not all of them, but the majority of them are, and that's the way they're taught. That's how they think you've got to make music. I mean, you can make music, but when you're trying to make something different and lasting, you don't make it like that.
You said in the book the Beatles music had character because if they made a mistake, we would leave the mistake.
That's right, yeah.
So it sounded like human.
Yeah, we'd build on it sometimes. If there was a mistake, and it wasn't like just a few wrong notes or something, but a rhythmic change or something in the middle of something, then they might like that, and then we'd actually augment it and work that into the song or the track,
Do you both enjoy this?
No, it's good. I like it because of what it means to the people, And especially we like I know I do personally like doing it here because there's a lot of energy here that I don't see in America.